My name is Jean-Charles Falloux. I will be the moderator of this session for the 45 next minutes. I work for Les Echos, which is the main economical and financial newspaper in France, and I'm actually the managing director of the Digital Media and Innovation Department. To know that I'm pretty lucky today to have such an extraordinary lineup of women with different backgrounds, and also coming from different parts of the world. And we're here today to talk about a lot of subjects. We've got technology and sustainable progress in our society, the role of engineering in poverty reduction and human development, and digital innovation. So it's a lot of topics to cover. But before we go on, let me just present them to you. Katrina Fischer, engineer in the oil industry, the gas and oil industry, sorry, has 12 years of experience working for ExxonMobil on a variety of roles in a variety of places. And she's actually working on the Kazakhstan project on the Caspian Sea. Pretty impressed with the project. Emily Heitman, there, Vice President and General Manager of Commercial Operations, Power Transformers for ABB North America. We have Isabelle Schlumberger, Executive Vice President of Sales and Development for JCDecaux, and the #1 advertisement company worldwide. We've got Ozlem Battal, Vice President of Human Resources for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa for Baxalta Incorporated, a global biopharmaceutical company. And we got Sandra Sims Williams, sorry, Chief Diversity Officer for Publicis Group, a global leader in marketing, communications, and business transformation. So how we're going to do this? We're going to have a conversation with the panelists and myself, and I will do my best to keep some time at the end for a Q&A. I say I will do my best because we got a lot of topics to cover. So let's just jump in, and my first question goes to Katrina. Okay, Katrina. As an engineer and your years of experience in the oil and gas industry, and how do you see this industry evolving on a technological point of view in order to meet the sustainable development?
Thank you, and thank you for your introduction. In my career, I've had the opportunity to work in a few assets that have employed our extended reach drilling technologies. And for those of you that aren't familiar with extended reach drilling, it's directional drilling of very long wells. So sometimes these wells are up to 10 miles long. They can be drilled from a point onshore or offshore, and are really instrumental in lowering our footprint and allowing us to access reserves and resources in places that we haven't been able to access previously. So it allows us to, for example, we utilize this technology in Sakhalin, offshore Russia, where we drill from onshore to offshore around 10 miles. It minimizes our impact on marine life, it minimizes our impact on the environment, and allows us to cost-effectively develop resources in places that we couldn't before. So we then see that technology have a knock-on effect in the area that we're working in, developing suppliers, developing the local community, developing many things, with that one technology.
Okay, and during a previous discussion we had, you've mentioned also the fact that gas has become a truly global resource. Why now?
3 simple letters, really, LNG. So liquefied natural gas is a technology where we take natural gas and make it basically, I think it's 1/600th of the size that it would be in its standard form. So LNG, the process is essentially taking out the impurities from the gas and cooling it and allowing it to be transported by ships. And so previously in places, we just started up a project last year in Papua New Guinea. So these resources were stranded in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. And if you saw the pictures, you wouldn't imagine that you'd ever be able to, start up a facility there. It allows you to find a market for these products and develop them in a way that they can be shipped, anywhere in the world.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, I did my homework tonight, and it's really impressive project. Okay, thank you, Katrina.
You're welcome.
If we stay focused on sustainable development issue, coupled with the role of engineering in human development, my next question goes to Emily. Following Katrina's answers, what new technology ABB is developing to reduce the carbon footprint of energy generation and transmission?
Certainly, I'd love to answer that. Do I have the wrong one?
Well, I don't think it's working, right?
Hello?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think it's on. So ABB has made great strides in our development of new technologies, particularly related to renewable energy. So when it comes to reducing the carbon footprint, that obviously means we wanted to decrease our need for traditional sources of power generation, such as oil. And with that being the case, we've been working on a lot of new products, both on products and systems. The products being different pieces of equipment that will help stabilize renewable energy sources such as solar and wind, as well as to store those. I think it's well known that solar and wind energy are intermittent, so we need the ability to be able to store it when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. So in many times then these renewable energy sources are perfect system, or the perfect type of generation to put in a community that may be stranded from the electrical grid, whether it's a remote community or maybe in a developing country, where we can create a microgrid that is basically an independent, small, closed-loop system that is able to generate power for that individual community and doesn't require to tap into the larger electrical grid. So with these microgrids, you're able to now improve the quality of life for a community that may not have the ability to tap into the electrical power that's available to more highly densely populated areas. But also, if you can use and design a system with renewable energy as the resource, it also lowers the cost of the oil that they would normally be using in perhaps a diesel generation.
And would you have an example of a project using microgrid technology that you can share with us?
Yes, actually, recently we just completed a project in Northwest Australia. It's a town called Marble Bar. I don't know if most people probably have never heard of it. It's a town in Northwest Australia. It's 200 people. This is considered the sunniest or the hottest place in Australia. In fact, it set a record and still has held this record for the world record for 160 days of continuous sun with a temperature of greater than 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know why why it's such a small populated area, but it's obviously this is very remote and a perfect opportunity to install solar power panels. So while for many years this area was powered by diesel generators, maybe, and in many cases, these remote areas, it's very difficult to get oil and diesel. It's not only difficult, but it's expensive to get this diesel oil out to those areas. So we actually worked on developing an entire microgrid, as I mentioned before, which is a hybrid. What we used is flywheel technology to stabilize and store via kinetic energy. I think everybody's heard of battery storage, which is more chemical storage capabilities. This is kinetic energy storage. And by doing this, the town of Marble Bar and the surrounding areas are now able to be powered by at least 60% of the time by solar energy. And then I have a few statistics here. Every single year now, this region has decreased their amount of use of diesel fuel by 400,000 liters and hence reduced the greenhouse gas emissions by 1,100 metric tons per year.
Oh, that's impressive. But if I come back also to the energy question, considering that the cost of producing electricity will drop sharply with those new technologies, can we say, or can I say that as a consumer, the price I will pay will be more in the insurance of a constant availability of electricity than the cost of producing it?
My answer to that is it depends. Right now, when we talk about a microgrid situation and where it works really well to have renewable energy available in these remote locations or isolated locations, yes, if the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, essentially you would say that the fuel or the generation source could be free. However, there's a lot of capital investment in this equipment and maintaining of the system. And until technology is developed to truly store this power for a long-term and high capacity, we will still always have that dependency on oil, which, as you say, is more of an insurance. But at this point, the technology race is still on for largely densely populated areas to prove that this is still an economically efficient method of power source. So the day that New York City and Paris are powered completely on solar panels, I think we absolutely will be having this discussion.
Okay, great. Let's continue on the carbon footprint issue, but through the digital innovation perspective. I have read somewhere that another way to combat greenhouse gas was to consume less energy. So I want to ask a question to Isabelle. And I know because JCDecaux has developed around the globe a bike sharing system that has impacts on relation to mobility in cities and at the same time reduces our carbon footprints. Could you describe in your own terms this project?
To me, Jean-Charles, it's a perfect 21st century project. First, because it was created in Vienna, in Austria, in 2003, so start of the 21st century. Secondly, because it was a very, very disruptive project. We are an outdoor advertising company coming from the media world, and we came completely out of the blue to propose to local authorities bike sharing systems. While you could have conceived that these projects could have been driven by public transportation authorities like railway authorities or subway authorities. So that was really a bit of a shamble. And also because I think it has put really on the table the subject of the sharing economy, right. Something that I'm going to use on an individual basis. Yes, it is a public transport, but I am using it not collectively, but individually. Mm-hmm. And I will share it with others. And frankly speaking, in 2003, 2005, it was not really something very, let's say, à la mode. Mm. And also because we came with the complete business model, which was financing it through advertising. So in many respects, I think it was very disruptive. And really asking the question of multimodality in urban environment and how the choice has to be wide in order on a 24-hour basis to be able to run around and choose from a day to another, if it's a rainy day or a sunny day, if you're late or if you have a little bit more time, which mean of transportation you're going to take.
True. And this morning, this is whatever.
You had multimodal.
Oh yes, I had a multimodal transportation. If I had a bike sharing, I would have been better. Through our previous discussion, you've also mentioned many times the notion of global village and the advent of smart cities in a very positive way. Can you tell us how do you see the digital revolution we are seeing today and its impact on the global village you're defending?
We again, at our level, as a partner to now 3,700 cities around the world in 76 countries, we see how cities are developing. If I just quote 2 or 3 figures, just for you to know, now 50% of the population, worldwide population, is living on 2% of the globe. And this figure is going to go up to 60% very soon in 2030, and probably to 65% of the population living in cities in 2040. Most importantly, stats shows that very soon, again in 2030, 80% of the economic growth production around the world is going to come from 600 urban environments. So that's quite massive. So cities are an incredible playground, are incredible location. You all, for the one of my age, you probably remember the film Blade Runner, which went out in '82. And it was really describing a very, very gloomy futurist city. And frankly speaking, it's not what we see today. And we see a very different city, and that's why I'm so positive about it. And I know that the what we call the global village, which means that cities are not anymore going to live with the city art and the suburbs, but much more in small villages where technology and interaction between people through virtual or physical interaction will develop. I spoke yesterday on another forum about the Lulu dans ma rue thing we developed in Paris, little kiosk with people you can ask through your smartphone or going to the kiosk to go and give you a help for a €5 per 20 minutes basis in order to change a bulb or help you with luggages or whatever.
Okay.
These can only develop because digital world is here to facilitate the communication and the physical interaction between people.
Well, that's pretty interesting. And then I want to ask a question to Sandra. And if we continue on to develop on Isabelle's concept of global village and the digital revolution, through our call, I recall that it was not that, or you were quite negative about it, or you had the first thoughts were quite negative about it. Can you tell us why?
Well, because of the job that I do, I stay in that framework of people and what it's doing to people, for people, and about people. So you start the conversation about me, so I can understand where you're coming from, and this is great. But what does it do for the next person who may not be in the cities? What is it going to do for those who are in the underdeveloped countries? Is everybody going to be brought along? Are we all going to make sure that everyone is in this? Because during the week, several days ago, or yesterday, my mind is blank, 57% have access to the internet. So if it's only 57% of the world population that has access to the internet, I would be concerned, because we are going to have a really large gap in terms of education, accessibility. How is it going to help those who are helpless? So that's why my mind stays there. So it went negative, I'm sorry.
No, I totally understand. Mm-hmm. And that's one point is important to you, and quite frankly to all of you through the discussion, that relates to the human cycle and the importance of considering people as your greatest assets, right? Mm-hmm. So what you've just said, and how does the feeds, well, where does that feeds in within the digital revolution we're seeing today? What would you suggest in terms of it's going a lot, you know, the pace is going stronger, and yet you have all those people out there. How we should...
Well, let's take the concept of the global village. So all of the industries, technology, marketing, all of these industries, we must do something about it. Because otherwise, truthfully, we leave revenue on the table if we're not reaching out to the world. Right. So it is helping people see the world as global, because there are people who stay in their little silos and cannot actually visualize what has to happen beyond the silo. So we have to, first of all, educate people. I think some of the things I've heard while here is that there are new things happening, but we heard it here. When will it be told to the rest, and how will that be executed? I always think it's important that if we invent something, we get very excited about it. Yes. But after we get excited about it, then who's going to hear about it, and how are we going to put it out there? So that it also has guardrails, and that people are understanding how to utilize it. Because I said also to you that I thought that with the internet, the information that is going across sometimes is so negative, and some of the information is used in a negative way, turning our children into little robots and interrupting the family structure. So we have to be more mindful of how it is utilized.
That's true. Okay, thank you, Sandra. And I propose that we move on to focus on the human development, the digital innovation, and the healthcare access. So my next question goes to Ozlem. From your point of view, can you tell us how technology is impacting access to healthcare today?
I think, you know, throughout the week as well, we had a lot of good discussions about how healthcare access is important and how the digital technology is impacting the access part of it. But I would like to just take a little bit of a framework from the science access part of it, like the medical information, data management, research and development, to more through the patients and the caregiver part of it, because I think it may build up for some of the discussions that we had throughout the week, because especially, I mean, in Baxalta, in my company, we are mainly focusing on the rare diseases. And rare diseases are the diseases that we find in an area that there are unmet medical needs. And when we are talking about unmet medical needs, actually you are addressing a patient profile or a disease area that is not in the top topic of the blockbusters or the big pharma companies. So when I was looking at in the internet about hematology as a world, in less than 40 seconds, I could get an access to approximately 19,200,000 results. This is coming from scientific research, patient advocacy group, and also the patients who are actually submitting their experience and the living with the hemophilia stories in there. So I found it very, very powerful. Why? Because when we look at the hematology worldwide, we are talking about maybe 480,000 people, but you can have an access to a community of millions of people. And when you think about as a mother or as a mother whose kid has been diagnosed as a hematology, which is a rare bleeding disorder, the access to this information, the therapy options, and also access to mothers, caregivers who are way above your reach becomes so critical to be able to build this personal binding about the disease and the treatment area. And also I think the technology becomes important for the patients and the caregivers because we started to own more decision-making power. Because, the individuals, they do have access. And the relationship between the traditional physician and patient paradigm is shifting because of the access to the information and being able to make some of the proposals about our own body or our, the significant other's body in order to get the best treatment options. And these options are not only driven by the companies itself, but also by building this, you can also call it a global village in terms of the virtual internet or the communication environment to be able to build this sisterhood, parenthood, the friendship in order to come together for the common purposes to improve the lives.
Okay. Well, I like the global village around. and if we just look at big data and science or healthcare, where does that, in your terms, where does that fit in? Because I've read a lot of articles, where they're looking at internet and you have access to information that nobody had access before, and that if you compile all those data, you would get, in terms of research, more information or more precise information on different type of disease. Big data is also part of if you're talking about your company, Baxalta, or about digital health, is something that is very important, right?
Mm-hmm. It is very important in I think, a couple of aspects, but I think there are a lot of diseases that are underdiagnosed, right?
Right.
And it takes a lot of time or more time that we may expect considering how the digitalization or the information sharing system in there. Like, for example, in the primary immunodeficiency disorder, right? It is also a very rare disease area. It may take an average of 7 years to get the diagnosis, although you may actually have a lot of literature, science, or the therapy the therapy opportunities behind. So it is still not necessarily solving the problem of getting the access of the diagnosis as well. So what does it mean is that we actually lose the lives, we lose the opportunities for the training or being in the life, the work cycle, etc. But also healthcare fundings and the resources if we don't get the treatment. So this data doesn't always solve the problem of diagnosis and the creating the awareness, because we talk also about how we use the data, how everything is getting connected in the broader system is important. And also data, I think the way that we are trending now is not about mass diseases, or nobody wants to be treated as a patient anymore. We all want to treat it as people. So this data now provides more and more individual and personal medicine opportunity or personal treatment opportunities in the access that we could provide in the broader sense.
Okay.
Let's give another example on this subject of how technology, not being now only an individual but also a phone number, enables West Africa to now have, in terms of vaccinology, the mother being informed of when she should come for the second and the third injection. The big problem in vaccinology at the moment is the child receives the first one, but not the second or the third one. Right. And some mothers have to travel by, bus, foot, or whatever. And it's very important that when she comes to the hospital or dispensaire, she's not going to wait the whole day. Right. And by receiving this text message, she knows what day, at what time she needs to go, and that's a massive improvement.
Right.
And to build on that, you will be surprised to probably hear that there are more than 100,000 of health applications developed over the last 5 years in order to be able to provide these individual treatment opportunities and changing the life cycle also, like the dietaries, the weight management, taking the medicines on a timely basis in the right protocols, right?
Yeah, and that's to go with the global village in the sense that everybody has to be aboard. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going back to Katrina, and still on the global village. So you're working today on the Kazakhstan project in Caspian Sea, right? And how does this project contribute to the concept of global village in regards to the local economy, employment, and human development?
Yes, so I've been fortunate enough to have spent the last year in a city called Atyrau on the western coast of Kazakhstan. So it's a city of about 200,000 people, and when you talk to people who've been there for some time, coming from North America and being in bigger cities, it's amazing to hear, 10 years ago we had one road, or every building you see is 4 years old. So even North Americans, where everything is new, when we go to Europe, we're impressed. Well, when I go to Kazakhstan, it's amazing that the pace of the growth and whatnot that's been there. And these developments have spurred that growth. So the project that I'm working on, is a major employer locally. So there's several thousands of people, that have gained employment by these types of development, and not just directly with the project, but also in terms of suppliers. There's expatriates like myself living in the community that they'll drive housing and cars and services. So it's really spurred growth in a lot of ways, local infrastructure wise. And then as well as partners in that community, we've made a conscious effort to contribute to the community. And when I say we, I say ExxonMobil, but also the partnership that I work with, NCOC, the North Caspian Operating Company, and then there's a second project in the area operated by Chevron. And so some examples of things that we've done there, we have ExxonMobil specifically has had a healthcare initiative where we've supplied 11 ambulances for rural areas, and we've provided a network, for them to it's basically like a 911, or we have in North America an infrastructure system to improve their response times and capabilities. And as well, they've provided a blood purifying system locally. And getting back to some of the discussion we've had earlier, we've been a big proponent of education. So we've trained several doctors, I think in the tens of doctors, to improve the local capability, and in particular in obstetrics and gynecology to help the newborn fatality rate in those areas. So, above and beyond oil and gas, we're focused on making a contribution in those communities. And the other two, operations that I mentioned as well, NCOC and TCO, as well do those types of things. And you see it in education and infrastructure and playgrounds and programs and many different things. So, as corporate citizens, as we do those projects in those places, it's important for us to help to build the global village in that community.
Okay, perfect.
Might I ask a question?
Sure.
So when you do this, go into a country, you do a profile of the country and their needs first?
Yeah, I think as a part of the discussion and dialogue as we're entering a country, that's a part of the agreements and founding agreements that we have with the areas, and then of course as citizens there we see where the needs are. But I mean we do those activities in places like Houston or cities like London. It's not unique to the area that I'm in, but it's everywhere we are. We look to contribute.
Well, no, this all makes me feel much better.
I'm glad I could do that.
And well, Sandra, I have one more question for you. In the long term, and in your role as a diversity officer, can we say that social, in terms of human cycle, in an organization, becomes a financial issue? In a sense that if you're really in having everybody on board, taking care in terms of social women problems or men problems, on having the fact that everybody has to be educated, etc. If an organization doesn't take care of that, then it might be translated into lower results, etc. Is there something that we can say about it?
Well, when I first started doing diversity, the word itself really it aims at women and people of color, most in the U.S. in particular. As we progress through the years, one of the things we do know is that all has to be at the table in order for change to happen. In gender, male and female have to be together and understanding each other so that we can cause things to change, your perspective to change. Certainly as I've been here, now I did start negative with you, okay. I have been educated quite a bit in the last 2 days, but I still feel like, we have to do something to keep educating ourselves about the issue and about how technology is affecting women, how technology is affecting the family structure, how technology is affecting people of color. In particular, example in the U.S., the social civil rights in the 60s was handled differently. Now they just make a call out on sort of group on and developing an activist background of Black Lives Matter. And when I talk about that, that's having a call to issue with police officers killing black men in America. So certainly technology was playing full force with that issue. So I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Thank you, Sandra. Isabelle, one more question, because I like good stories. Mentioned that JCDecaux was before in the culture hub, right? And now you're in the tech hub. And can you describe, the evolution? Everybody has exactly the idea that JCDecaux is more in the advertisement business, where I've read that I think it's last week in London, all those.
We won the bus shelter contract in London. Yes. So we were very happy.
Right. So you're more and more becoming a tech company.
We have a very strong focal point on our clients. I think this company 50 years ago, when started with his founder, Monsieur Decaux, Monsieur Decaux was very client-centric at the time where I don't think the word existed really. So he focused on local authorities' needs, and he focused on advertising clients, advertisers and media agencies' needs. So in parallel, we've tried to develop over the last 50 years the best services for both. So the best advertising locations in cities or transportation locations like airports or train stations or subways, but always having in mind what we can provide local authorities with or transport authorities with. So in a way, that's the way the free sharing bicycle scheme came out, is what a local authority need today. And when we think about the smart city has to be smart in many, many, many respects. It has to be smart economically for sustainability. It has to be smart for housing. It has to be smart for services it can provide. It has to be smart for transportation. The fact that we are an outdoor advertising company means that outdoors means a lot for us. So we strongly feel that we can help in let me give you, I don't know, 2 or 3 examples, like parking, car parking and traffic control in the cities. Frankly, it's going to be a great stuff when through apps, through the conversion of the physical and the digital world, things are going to improve. And we're going to reduce, carbon emission by, I don't know how much, when we're going to be able to better control car parking and traffic in cities. Lighting. Cities are lit, and thanks God, because it's a key element in security for both men and women, but especially women. And you can control it in a much, much better way now. Free Wi-Fi. It is true that this digital world will only exist for everybody if access to the web is possible everywhere at any time. And so free Wi-Fi in transportation locations, but also in city center, will be a key matter. And we strongly feel that as we have been able to provide the bicycle scheme through a financing with advertising on free Wi-Fi, that's what we do in airport at the moment, for example. Brands are extremely happy to provide free Wi-Fi, and suddenly as an air passenger, you're extremely happy to be in an airport providing you free Wi-Fi, even if you stay 5 hours.
Right, true. And that means that you have access to energy every time also. And
Yes.
that was one thing, Emily, that you, ABB was working on also, is sort of a power generator. If the grid would be down for some reason, you had a project, right, that gives the possibility to get the grid back up very rapidly, right?
That's right. And as we talk about community, no matter, I think the statistics we also heard the other day were there are more people that own cell phones than actually have power in their houses. So with electricity, it gives people access to technology, which then also improves the lives of. So our ability to make sure that we have the technology available and develop that for not just remote, isolated communities, developing countries, but also consistency of power in all areas.
Okay, great. We've got 5 minutes left. Is there any questions you want to ask the panelists? No question? Please.
I think for time management purposes, those who want to ask a question, maybe you just come here in front of the stage. It's going to be much easier. Thank you.
Yes, I had a question for Sandra. I'm very curious about your role, Chief Diversity Officer. What is it about?
Okay, that's an easy one. I am responsible for the Publicis Group, the diversity strategy. We develop a strategy to cover those who are considered disenfranchised for the most part in terms of women, people of color, And as I had said, when we first started, it was focused on diversity, but it's also, we answer to the call of all people in our organizations. Because if you bring all to the table, we then begin to understand each other better and not have preconceived notions about each other. We can work together better, have understand different perspectives. So this is about bringing, we have what is called professional development for all people in our agencies. We have business resource groups, and business resource groups are groups usually called affinity groups, but now because we do business, we have changed the name to business resource groups. But they're made up of, there's Viva Women, and that covers the women in our organization. We have Viva Mama, we have Viva Bisa, and we have Viva Tech. So we answer to interest of people in our organization. And when we do that, we call that talent engagement. So now it's called talent engagement and inclusion. So this is about making our organization an inclusive organization.
And just if other organizations also have a diversity officer?
Yeah, actually in Baxalta we also have diversity and inclusion as a business subject, directly working with our culture and the communications group, mainly focusing on the diversified talent and also diversified business needs. That's how we work with our communities. Because again, when we look at the healthcare, there are a lot of researches showing that the healthcare decisions in a higher percentage are done by women. So how you will be able to get the scientists, the product developers, the R&D groups, technicians, to the decision making of the company to be able to address the needs of the main product users is very, very critical for us. So we do have a specific focus on diversified group needs in both our talent management, but also in the external touch points.
Perfect. Any other questions? No? Our time is almost up. In terms of diversity, just another example. I mean, I'm very interested in that, and it's something that we should, all do. And through the discussions I had with you was pretty enlightening for me. So that's something great, and we're gonna look to it. Okay, our time is up. I just wanted to thank you very much for being here. Please, a big round of applause for the panelists. Thank you, and do have a great day.